I'm Dr. Greg Wu, and I'm here with Shyam Desai. Shyam, thank you for doing this. I'm very curious as a practice owner myself with two locations. What your experience is when you decided to sell your practice. But let's start off by just introducing yourself and telling a little bit about your history.
So I'm Dr. Desai. I'm an orthodontist. Finished residency in 2008 and bought my first practice in 2010 and grew to 5 locations and multiple orthodontists. And about a year ago, John helped me transition my practice over to, I consider my partner, the company called My Orthos. That's a quick overview of my background. So it's interesting. I'm young, obviously I'm 40. In the general lifespan of when you think you're going to retire, when you first start practicing, most people probably don't anticipate 40. And I don't consider myself retired. I'm still practicing, but about two and a half years before I transitioned to practice, I knew that I wanted to continue to grow the practice. But my vision was, I'd like to continue to grow the practice without having to continue to take on additional debt and loans, which I needed to do if I'm going to keep buying practices and doing that. So that's what prompted me to look for the right partner.
So are you completely sold out at this point, or are you still?
Yeah. So the ownership of CT braces, I own 0% of that. My orthos own 0% of that. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. And what prompted you to work with JW Advisories in selling the practice rather than just going through a community? I know that's a common question, at least for myself too. I'm gonna be looking at that in the future. So why did you decide to go with somebody that
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, it's a great question, and I honestly didn't know that I was going to go with John when I made the decision. Like, okay, I need a partner. I want a partner. What I did was I started searching for partners. And so I reached out to groups that I knew that were interested. And I quickly realized that I needed better representation to be able to get maximum value out of my practice. So then I switched my search to, okay, who's going to be the right, broker for me? And when I started that search, I actually didn't realize John was a broker. I knew John early on in his career. He actually helped me get my first loan with Bank of America. And so we had a long-standing relationship and we'd keep in touch. But yeah, as soon as I found out that he was a broker, I knew that was the way I needed to go in terms of having the right representation when I was bringing my practice to the market.
Yeah, I worked with John too early on in his career when he was a banker too. So when he became a broker, that was something interesting for me to know. What was the experience like with the transition of selling? Did you have to meet with a lot of different partners, and how were they introduced? Could you talk a little bit about the overall experience?
Yeah, no, and so when I first started doing the search on my own, I didn't commit to a broker right away. I was looking for different groups. So I would reach out and find a group and meet with them, and find another group and meet with them. And they kind of look at my numbers and send me, an offer, let's say. The process with John was a lot different. What he does is that he'll look at your practice and do an in-depth analysis, come up with a packet to help represent your practice in the way it needs to be represented, versus just sending stuff as it's being requested. And in doing that, he'll take that packet and show people that he knows are, good partners for what I envision. He knew what I wanted in a partner. And so it's not like he showed this to 100 people, because the problem with showing it to 100 people is that you'll get people that are interested, but you don't want to start talking to the wrong people. And what that means is it's not just about the number you're going to get in the end. You have to match with the right partner, meaning they got to take care of you and your needs and wants too. I had a certain need and want where I wanted to be with someone who's going to support future growth of the practice and take care of my team, and just treat patients and people the way that I was treating them before the partnership. And John did a great job of filtering through to making sure that, I met with people. And so I had enough decisions to make, but didn't waste my time by introducing me to groups that he knew that it wouldn't be a great partnership with. And there's actually one really good example. I won't say specific names, but he actually represented a different doctor who had different needs, and they transitioned to practice. And as I was getting towards the end of deciding which practice, he still hadn't introduced me to that group. I'm like, John, like, why don't you introduce me to this group? Like, why don't we get an offer from them? Like, maybe that'll help and just improve our offer. And he's like, well, he didn't think it was going to help improve our offer, but his reason for not introducing me to them was he didn't, with what I wanted in a partner, he didn't find them to be the right people. And I was like, I didn't understand what he was saying. I couldn't, I was like, just introduce me. Well, what happens is actually a few minutes ago, the doctor who had transitioned into that group reached out to me because he's not happy in that situation. So John knew what he learned from that transition. He knew he didn't want to put me in that situation because he knew what my needs were. So, I mean, that right there is like priceless, because if you transition your practice with the wrong group, I can only imagine it's going to be a difficult situation, stressful all around.
That's great insight. I think what I say is we hire these professionals in our career to help us protect us from ourselves, right? Because you and I we have our expertise in dentistry, orthodontics, and then we hire accountants, we hire practice advisors. They see things that we don't see. So I think that's a great story of showing that kind of value. Having gone through the process, is there anything that you would have done differently, or things that you wish you had done different than what you've already done when you went through the sale of the practice?
Yeah, so I mean, my transition was at a unique time. It was in February of 2020. That's about 6 weeks before the world shut down almost.
Right.
So I don't think anyone could have predicted what was going to happen 6 weeks later, because if we could have, then we would have done things differently. But looking back on it, and I think all the deals now have like a pandemic clause and something, because most of these bigger deals, you're going to have earnouts that you need to do certain things to help maintain the practice, because the person buying the practice usually isn't interested in buying the practice, you leaving, and the practice going to nothing, because what's the value in that? So these earnouts, obviously, they're not as easy to hit when you're closed for 2 months time. But even without having the foresight of the pandemic coming, John was able to negotiate that first 12-month earnout, that number, to be so reachable that I do plan on reaching it without changing the numbers or negotiating anything different, which I think this group would be open to doing if I wasn't going to reach it. But I'm actually amazed myself that I'm going to reach this number that with 8 weeks of no production. So it's I don't think John had that foresight, but he definitely knew that, okay, we have to make this number super reachable. So it's so we're not stressing to reach it. It's something that the buyer needs to be comfortable, to know that the practice is going to continue. But from my end, him representing me, I need to be able to reach it. And for me to be able to do that with 2 months closed, I'm impressed in that, because I didn't think twice about it. I was like, yeah, I could hit that number, no problem. Now, if you would have asked me, can I hit it with 2 months closed? I don't know. I definitely was stressed about that. And that was probably my biggest stress during the 8 weeks of being closed, is like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there was other stresses as well, but that didn't help. I was like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah, no, I think all of us in dentistry, when we closed it completely flipped our business upside down. That on top of PPE, how we had to change protocols, all those things, because I don't think dentistry was really meant to social distance. Really, it's not easy to do that. So in our field, on top of trying to work on a patient with a mask on, so because they don't have a mask on. So, is there any other things that for someone like me, I'm not looking to sell right now, but is there something that you would give advice to people who are thinking about it in like the next 5 years or 10
Yeah.
years? And, something that you would say, hey, this is something I would have considered doing to prepare for it, even though I'm not looking to sell right now.
Yeah, I'll give you just a little bit more backstory on myself. So when I bought my first practice in 2010, I did a lot of transitions, almost 1 to 2 transitions a year. I was buying practices from doctors who had maybe multiple locations and either consolidating locations. I did 2 startups. And then what happened is I made a decision to sell 2 locations. So it was all buy for the first like 6 years. I got to a point where I had an associate, a good friend of mine who was working with me for 5 years. We actually went to residency together, a great friend of mine. And it was the right time for him. He wanted to buy. And those 2 locations, it was the right time for me to sell those locations. So I actually sold those 2 locations doctor to doctor without any representation. That was in 2017. So I had experience on the buy side and the sell side. But I knew when it came to this bigger picture of transitioning this the whole business, I knew I needed someone else to help me. And I'll tell you, even if I didn't find my orthos or my partner on my own. John introduced me to my orthos, which obviously is priceless because they're the partner that I'm with, and I think they're doing an amazing job. I'm totally happy with the partner that I'm with. But even if I was able to find my orthos on my own, I'm not sure I would have been able to close the deal with the terms that I got. And not only that, just like you said, I would have gotten in my own way. I know even with John representing me, I was like, oh, John, maybe we should wait. The deal was scheduled to close in February, and there were some things that we found out at the end of the when we were getting close to closing, where I had to pay off like some real estate loans as part of the closing. I was like, oh, maybe we should wait another month so I get another month's revenue. And looking back on that, imagine if I did that, try to wait another month and going into the pandemic, that would have, I'm just like, wow, I could have just totally blew up this whole deal over, something that's very minor.
Yeah, right. Don't step over dollars to pick up pennies, right?
Yeah.
So something like that. No, that's great. What did you use a broker when you were buying practices too? How did you do? Because you said you did both the buyer and the seller side. Obviously, you didn't work with John on buying, but talk to me a little bit about the experience when you were buying practices. Because I know out there's going to be people that are like, well, I'm not looking to sell, but I'm looking to buy. And maybe they're going to use someone like John to buy too.
So yeah, I mean, I didn't have good connections on the buy side. When I met John and when I was doing my buying, he was more on he was working with Bank of America, and I knew other brokers. I would, sift through practices that were for sale. As an orthodontist, the major place that a lot of these practices end up is we have the American Association of Orthodontics has a career opportunity, like almost like a job bag, almost like where orthodontists specifically post like either associate positions, practices for sale, or those types of things. So I would sift through those things. But even when practices get to that point, I can't say I found any practices through that. My strategy for finding practices is just doing personal networking, going to meetings, meeting doctors, shaking hands, and having conversations, setting up lunches, and just talking to people and seeing where they are, and seeing if their plan for transitioning their practice can align with your plan for possibly helping them transition their practice. And that's what it was. And it's, all of my transitions were different. There was one doctor who had 2 locations, and the day I bought the practice, the next day he didn't want to be around. So I made that happen. There was another doctor who, sold me a practice and wanted to be an associate. So we tried to make that work out. So that if you're looking to buy a practice, what's worked really well is just network. If you know what area you want to buy in, just go meet all the dentists. It may seem weird, but it's, even if you don't end up buying that person's practice, and that's not how you have to approach the meeting, just get to know the person first. see where they're thinking, and see if they're in the mindset, like you said, of the next 5 years. Do they want to transition their practice? And if they do, then it's a good time that they should start thinking and about who they want to transition the practice to, or how they want to transition the practice. And so just having those conversations, and having hopefully them keeping you top of mind when they say, okay, let me talk to Dr. Desai or Dr. Wu to see, if he's interested in possibly helping me transition my practice. But I think the key is when you have those conversations, don't go into it like, I want to buy this practice. It's more, let me learn about you. Let me see where you are in your career. What's your thoughts of how you want to transition your practice? And when you get that information, you see if that's going to align with what your vision was. If not, you may have to change your vision, or it may not be a good opportunity for you. But either way, you get to meet another practitioner and another person in the area.
And how about your team? I mean, obviously, we go into practice, we start off, and your team becomes your close family, because they help you get to where you're at and your success. And then then all of a sudden you're gonna decide to sell. How did your team handle it? How did John help you with that? And then how do they take it? And now that you've transitioned to the other side, where are they at with all that? And talk to me a little bit about how that transition went, because I know a lot of doctors they'd be interested to hear that. Like, hey, is my team going to be taken care of? Are the people that helped me get here going to be taken care of as well?
Yeah. So that's part of finding the right person or the right partner. And for me, that was important, but it's still, even though, I did my due diligence and before you do anything, you think you have the right partner, but you don't really know until you try it. That was one of my fears, is like, first of all, how's my team gonna view this transition? But not only that, how's my partner gonna treat my team? Are they gonna treat them well? And so, John, before that, I definitely reached out to John. I was like, what can I tell them leading up to this? How can I prepare them? And he said, just be honest and upfront with them, and let them know that this is the best thing for them and for the practice in the long term. And it really has been. I mean, the partner I chose, they've improved the how much they paid for healthcare. Through this COVID thing, they've done way more than I can imagine I would have done in terms of, paying people for time off and, close contact situations and things like that. So yeah, I mean, having someone having a broker who's gone through the transitions and who knows how the team will handle it will definitely help you prepare your team. From my transition, what I learned after the transition, or the day of, right, when they find out, is everyone is initially going to be scared. No matter what you tell them, right. Most people are going to be scared, especially if you end up partnering with like a DSO, or they hear like private equity back, because as soon as they hear private equity back, a lot of people have feelings about private equity.
Right. It's all
from
about
other
the money,
fields,
right?
From other fields, right? They look at it like, the biggest fear, I think, if you ask anyone who has just a general first thing, what comes to your mind, private equity? Oh, they're going to come in and cut costs, or come in and change everything. And that's, if you pick the wrong partner, maybe that could be the case. But you have to be confident when you get to that point that you had John to represent you, and he didn't introduce you to anyone that's going to treat you or your team bad. And you have to relay that to the team and say, listen, we did the work. And yes, there are some partners or some people who I could have went with that wouldn't have treated you well. But I know that I used John, and that he helped me, and he only introduced me to people that he thought would treat me well. And not only that, after that, I did my own research and diligence into these people to know that they are the right people to help us grow to the next level that we're looking to grow to.
So obviously, most dentists, like you said earlier, work till they're like 50 or 60 to start looking at, selling the practice. What's your next plans? I mean, you said you're still practicing, but you're not really retired. You planning to just practice as an orthodontist, or do you have other ventures? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so it's a good question.
What's your long-term, journey with this now?
I love orthodontics. I love seeing patients. But what you realize, I have 4 young kids, And what you realize is when you're seeing patients or doing orthodontics, you're not with your kids. So I don't want to completely retire, but I want the flexibility in my life where I can do what I want with my kids, and still have what I loved about practice is seeing patients and helping grow the practice, right? So if I could see patients, a few days a week and continue to help grow the practice and bring in associates and strong doctors who can help grow the practice, that's what I envision. And just getting in a little bit into real estate to set up other passive streams of income, because when you do this type of transition, your income is going to go down drastically, right? Obviously, you get money for the transition, but your yearly income or what you were making on salary is going to be a lot less than it was before. So just setting up other passive streams of income, like real estate and stocks, to help offset the lower salary that you'll have.
And then now, since you're still working there, was that a hard transition for you because you're no longer quote unquote the boss anymore? Talk to me a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think my answer is probably different than a lot of people. Maybe not, but I even though my staff probably always looked at me as the boss, I would always try to tell them that I'm not.
Right.
I'm an orthodontist. I'm with them because when I'm there as an orthodontist, that's really what I want to do. It's very hard when you're working as a dentist, trying to treat a dental issue, and they come at you with a practice management issue or something wrong with something's leaking here, something's not working there. So I didn't want them to look at me as their boss. I wanted them to be able to solve problems. And I had a setup. We had a big team. We have when we transitioned, it was about 55 team members when you include all the doctors. So I had an operations manager too. So I would always point to him as my boss. And so, but it is definitely a different feeling, because they still come to you with some questions that you used to answer and you want to answer those, but now you might not be the right person to even answer those questions. And but you get used to it. I never looked at myself as the boss, so it was easy for me, I guess. So if someone is of the mindset that they look at themselves as a boss in their office, if they're going to continue to practice, they still are the boss. It's, when you do these transitions, someone's not coming in and taking over your position unless the selling doctor, if that's your vision, if you want to, sell and leave, then yeah, you're not going to be the boss anymore. But they're still going to look to you as the doctor, the selling doctor, to stay on and lead the team and the practice, as long as you want to continue to lead it. And so yeah, that's how I look at it.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any other questions. I think you were very thorough, and this has been very informative for me. Do you have any parting words of advice for people who are looking to work with John or even considering selling the practice in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I talk to doctors weekly, who are considering, transitioning or partnering, and I tell them, the first thing is you yourself. I mean, maybe John can help, but I don't know if John can come in at this point. I think first the doctor has to decide, am I ready to transition? Forget about what type of transition or anything like that. Just figure out, am I ready to transition? And then if you do say yes, or even maybe let me think about what a transition might look like, then you need to help to find someone who's going to be representing you and help you find the right situation to get into. I would have no reservations recommending John as the person that you reach out to, because he's going to listen to you, and understand your unique situation and help you get into the best situation you can for your transition. And in the end, if you were on that maybe of that first question that you're not sure, and John helps you and you find out what it is or what it looks like to transition, and you don't want to, and trust me, you're not forced to do the transition.
Right.
You have to be, but it's great to understand what it looks like and get that information. The hardest thing, you mentioned 5 years out, and I think that's a great time frame to start looking, because the hardest situation, I'm sure, for John or even the doctors who do it is like, okay, I want to be out in a year, or I want to be out in 6 months. you're not leaving enough runway to properly set yourself up for
Right.
success. If that's what way you look
So
at it.
more time to plan, the better. If you're actually even remotely thinking about it, start thinking about it.
Exactly. I mean, it's not like you're gonna talking to John or obviously there's other brokers, but talking to John is not gonna mean you have to sell your practice. What that means is you're gonna find out what it looks like to sell your practice. And yeah, I think 5 years is a great time frame. If you see yourself 5 years from now transitioning out, I would start looking or talking to John to see if if he can represent you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Desai. This was very informative. Um, you know, look forward
Awesome.
to chatting with you again.
Yeah, it was great talking to you. Good luck with everything. If anyone has any questions, they can feel free to reach out. Maybe you could send my email address. My personal email address is and1 ANDONE 929 @gmail.com.